Here's two guys that built a toothbrush out of bacon, Aaron and Jonathan.
Howdy, and welcome to episode 42 of In the Rabbit Holes Urban Survival Podcast. In today's episode, we discuss people who need people. We're your hosts, Aaron
and Jonathan,
and you are in the rabbit hole, safe and sound. Today's show is sponsored by Katz Coffee. If you're looking for truly exceptional coffee to help you survive the morning or the next zombie apocalypse, you need to be drinking Katz. They specialize in the finest coffee from sources that prioritize environmental responsibility and are fair trade certified. Their goal is to achieve perfection in every cup. Check them out at Katz, K-A-T-Z as in zebra, coffee.com, or click on their bright green banner on the site and make sure you're dealing with an official sponsor of the show. Again, that's Katz, K-A-T-Z as in zebra, coffee.com. So today we're actually going to cover a pretty common topic within the prepper community, which is, how do you find other preppers?
We hear it all the time. Everybody asks us, I'm into this, but how do I find other people who are also into this?
And honestly, I think when we were thinking through the show, we were actually laughing a little bit, because honestly, for the most part, it's just like dating.
Yep.
Exactly, it's just like dating. And an advice I think we've always given friends whenever they ask for dating advice, well, where do I actually meet somebody that I would want to date? And the answer is kind of simple, but I think maybe it's not, because so many people, I guess, just don't think of it. But it's go do things you actually enjoy doing that are relevant to you in your life, and you will actually, astonishingly enough, meet other people that are also interested in the same kind of thing.
Yeah, I think people tend to overcomplicate the idea, and it's kind of, if you just go out and do the things you enjoy doing, you're going to find other people who enjoy doing those things also, which automatically means that they're, I think in the community we use like-minded a lot. Well, you're bound to find like-minded individuals doing the things you like doing, because most likely there's some corollary to the other things you enjoy doing.
So, I mean, we could rattle off a quick list of things that we thought of, which are Appleseed. Project Appleseed is a great one. We've talked about it a lot. I don't think I've ever been to a Project Appleseed where I did not meet some preppers, and preppers that felt comfortable about talking about the fact that they were preppers.
Yeah, it's a real community event too. So I mean, people come out there with the expectation that they're going to talk to and hang out with the people in the tents next to them. So you don't go to an event like that and then separate yourself off. You go and you socialize, you meet new people, and I think it ends up being a much better experience for it.
Yeah. There's also wild edible classes, if you can find them in your area. We spent, how long did we spend trying to find wild edibles?
We spent too long, and again, I think we overcomplicated it, because when we actually finally got to the local
it made
Houston
perfect
Arboretum.
Sense. Yeah, it was at the local Arboretum, and it was like, all right, that makes perfect. But part of it was we actually had to dig through their website because it wasn't irregularly scheduled. Yep. And that was also an instance where we had to take the initiative because they had no class scheduled.
Right.
And so we emailed them and was like, what does it take to get another class on the schedule? And they actually said, well, you've got to get so many people together. So we got all of our friends together and
the interesting part was, once we got the minimum number, there were a lot of people in that class who weren't with us.
Yeah, there was like 20 people in the class, and I would say at least more than half the class had nothing to do with us.
Yeah, we only were really about 7 of them, I think.
Yeah, I think so.
So I mean, that's, if you were to do something like that, get your 6 other friends together, get a class going, you have the potential to meet 13, 14 other people that you didn't know before who have a similar interest.
Mm-hmm. What was another one where we met like-minded? It's CERT.
Yeah, CERT was a great
one. Now, admittedly, we did not stay in contact with anybody we met at CERT, but we definitely met people that were actually almost everyone in the class to one degree all the way to crazy,
Mhm.
were actually interested
Well, actually,
in
that's
prep.
not 100% true. We stay in touch with Marnie, and we had
That is
Marnie on
very
the show.
true. Yes, we did.
We do stay in touch with her. You know, it's not necessarily as a regular friend kind of relationship.
Right, but we still stay
But
in touch
we
with
do
her.
stay in touch with her, and we try to make sure we stay up with what's going on with CERT.
Mhm.
So, but those are large classes, and the thing about those is, and Marnie pointed it out, churches throw them, community centers throw them.
And there's all
So-
kinds of activities,
Yep.
like at least in Houston, we have CERT Rodeo, which is like a huge citywide deal where there's like hundreds of people come out and get involved in that and form teams and do all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, and here they also participate in the MS-150. They're the group that helps
Yeah.
hand out the water bottles. They help control kind of the directional aspects of which way to go. They give information. So you can get involved with those aspects and meet other people in the community as well who didn't necessarily take the same CERT class you took, but did take CERT.
There's also taking classes, which, I mean, that goes back to the I in Survival Chi, which we talk about being intelligence, acquiring skills, gaining knowledge. And there's all kinds of classes out there for, I get one on a regular basis from the Houston Arboretum, which is for rain barrel construction.
Yep.
The only problem is every time they've offered it like 5 times now since I've been a subscriber to their email list, and every time it never fails. I've got something going on that I can't get out of whenever they have that class. But that class still happens, and I still want to take it. Let's see. And I've seen there's a whole big local group that Jason McConnell, the Redneck Resource, found that's permaculture. They're into rainwater, all kinds of really interesting classes, and I can't think of the name of it now. I'll put it in the show notes.
And of course, there's leisure learning, which in different areas has different names, but it's that whole idea of non-affiliated learning. So it's not necessarily a university doing it, although sometimes the universities host it, but they're usually either free or very inexpensive classes, and they offer everything from welding to business classes to Photoshop to gardening classes. So if you were just interested in the gardening aspect, or you wanted to become a little bit more handy and you want to do welding or carpentry.
That is actually where I first learned how to weld.
Yeah, and those are great classes. They usually actually do have very talented people come in for those.
Oh yeah, it was the guy that taught us was a very famous metal sculptor that taught, and he taught all the different kinds of welding within reason that you could teach within 2 days. But I mean, it was still enough that I got a taste and was able to, once I walked away from the class, maybe not make a perfect bead,
right?
But it was still
you had enough talent.
I had enough talent to go do it if I absolutely had
cool.
to.
That's actually really cool. The other thing that I saw was, and I think we saw this together. We never ended up doing it, but it was neat. They had a mechanics class, like how to go repair your truck.
Yeah,
I mean, it was a whole class on just doing basic car repairs, and it was beyond just the oil change. It took it to that next level.
Actually, I think that one was a community college course that we were looking at. The leisure learning was a little more
but it was
subdued.
open to anybody.
Yeah.
It was still open to
anybody.
And I think there was I think the total fee for it was something like $75. You didn't walk away certified or anything like that, but if you had a car at home, you could at least do a basic repair on it.
So I think the idea here is branch out, think about it. Even, you can get on the forum and start a thread and maybe even think through some different ideas within the forum and list out what are some other ideas for classes and things that maybe people haven't thought of that might lead you to meet other people that are like-minded.
There's an interesting aspect to it too. It doesn't have to be, we've brought up a couple things that were prep related or CERT, or even when I was talking about the leisure learning, I kind of position it towards the prep. The reality of it is, if you have an interest in Photoshop, go take a Photoshop class. If you have an interest in something else, go take the classes. It's all part of that building your intelligence, your knowledge base. And it doesn't all have to be prep related, because you can find ways to make anything come back to prep. And if it is something like Photoshop, maybe it comes down to being more involved in your community and helping them design flyers. I mean, it could be that's a pretty big stretch, but I mean, that's still...
Well, it can even you can take it to the point where maybe you get good enough to start doing freelance on, wow, I just went brain dead. What's the name of that site I use for...
I don't know.
I use it sometimes for finding freelance editors.
Oh, yeah, Elance. Yeah,
Elance,
get on
thank
Elance.
you,
Yep.
thank you. I have evidently I smoked crack before we recorded.
Well, you know, I watched him do it. I should have stopped him. Told him.
Actually, I
after
think
the
it was
show.
gunpowder.
I think it was gunpowder. I think we inhaled a lot of gunpowder today.
But
But when you're taking those classes, one of the things I want to point out is you can start. You know, Aaron came up with this little term of pinging people's interests, and you can start doing that coming from any type of class. Because just think about it this way: if you had an interest in it, there is a chance that someone else in that class has an interest in the things you're interested outside that class, and it could be prep, it could be something else, but just something to build out your network and expand on what you're capable of doing by bringing in additional skills.
And to go into pinging people's interest a little bit, I think to expand on the term, when you ping someone's interest, because I think that was one of the questions that was coming up on the forum, is how do you deal with it when you how do you approach the subject with somebody? And it's the easiest way to do it with somebody that you've never met. Well, it's a lot like a cocktail party when you've never met somebody before, and let's say you want to bring up, everyone always broaches the subject of like religion or politics or something like that in an atmosphere, but they do it very subtly. If you really think back to all the times that kind of conversation has come up with a perfect stranger, it started in such a simple, subtle way where maybe somebody has brought up a current event. We'll use Libya as an example. You know, you just met somebody. Hey, gosh, man, what do you think about all that stuff going on in Libya? And people more often than not, as soon as you ask them a question, will feel the need to, more often than not, tell you more than you ever wanted to know about their opinion on it.
People like to share.
People do. People are dying to talk to one another, and especially if they have an opinion about something. And I mean, that's a pretty big one that people will most likely have a very strong opinion about, that will very quickly tell you one way or another whether or not you have an interest in pursuing a prepper type conversation with that person.
Yeah, and it can be as simple as, you know, you could be talking about what you did on the weekend, and you could say, well, I was at this Appleseed event.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, we use Appleseed as the example a lot, but it could be I took a wild edibles class. You know, this could be somebody in the Photoshop class I was talking about, or you take a guitar class because you like music or whatever it might be. And as you're doing that, you're talking to somebody, you're getting to know them like you would for anything. And the questions you just go into it of, what did you do this weekend? Well, I took this wild edibles class. Oh, what's a wild edibles class? You know, and it just goes from there. And you can ping just how receptive they are to the conversation. You may find that they're not preppers, but they find the topic interesting. Well, hey, go for it. Talk to them about it. You know, don't be evangelical about the concept. There's no point in
cramming it down people's
there
throats.
You go. That's the word. Cramming it down people's throats. But at the same time, having a conversation about your interests is the same as having a conversation about theirs. They may be really into stamp collecting. And now, at the same time, that's a real quick way to find out. You know, if their eyes glaze over and it's the same way you'd react to their stamp collecting conversation, well, change the topic and move on to something else. They could still be a great person to talk to. It's just
exactly
they're not necessarily part of that prep community.
And I think within the community, and so many of us, especially if you're new to prep, a lot of people have a real aversion to telling people that they are involved in prep in any way. And I think the way we talked a little bit of it in, I don't remember the episode number, but we had an episode on convincing others to prepare, and it's that same kind of pinging people's interest. It's a slow lead in where, well, for example, I was in several times when I've had to go to Guitar Center to pick up microphones, microphone cables, or whatever for this podcast. People always say, "Oh, well, what are you doing it for?" "Oh, well, I'm doing a podcast." "Oh, well, what are you doing a podcast on?" And I always say, "Well, it's on disaster preparedness and mentality, prepper, being concerned with one's personal safety and personal responsibility." And then lead into, it's kind of a newer version of survival, without the camo and without running around in the woods and all that stuff. And they go, "Oh, wow." I've never had anybody go, "Wow, that's really weird, man." Everybody always goes, "Oh, wow, that's really neat." Even when I was in the Apple store.
I think that's the whole idea. It's the positioning, to some extent.
It is the spin.
There's no sugarcoat per se. It's just you don't position it as, "Oh, yeah, I'm a survivalist." Because immediately before you even say it, that has a bad connotation in a lot of people's heads.
Yeah.
But if you tell them, hey, I'm all about disaster preparedness, and I just want to make sure that my family's going to be okay if there's a hurricane or this, that's a nice, easy way. Ease people into a conversation because you don't know where they are on the spectrum. It's the same idea with a political conversation.
Yeah, we were just having this conversation
Yeah.
last night with a very close friend of ours, which
Exactly.
is, and he was getting very frustrated. He's also a libertarian, and I think he's where, and we were talking about this, you said it last night, you're where we were a couple of years ago, which is
Exactly.
angry about the topic, and we're not there anymore, but he was just like, I don't know how to talk to people about this topic without wanting to punch them in the head. And it's like, well, that maybe you need to calm down a little first.
Right.
But it's also, that's, you're getting a bad reaction from people because you're walking up and immediately cramming down what to them seem like very extreme ideas, because they are extreme.
When
Because
you go the full
when
on
you go
extreme
full
view.
on extreme view,
Right.
like, okay, we'll take a libertarian principle of, well, all drugs should be legalized overnight. And for most people, that is such a shock to their system and understanding of how society should work, because we've lived with prohibitions
Right.
for so long that, well, yeah, it is an extreme view unless you back up before those.
Right, you have to walk
prohibitions.
into something like that, and that's with anything. I mean, it doesn't matter whether it's politics or prep or even, if you're a fan of a specific type of vehicle, if you go in and say, you know what, the XYZ car is the best thing ever, and it will make your hair stand up on end, and you're going to jump up and down and love it all day, people are going to look at you like you're nuts. But if you go in and say, hey, I just got myself XYZ car, and has 0 to 60 time of 3.8 seconds, and it's this, and this, you might be like, wow, that sounds like a pretty neat car. So it's all about easing things and how you say it and walking into something calmly. Aaron and I both have a tendency every now and then to get worked up about something, and it's really tough to take something you're passionate about and not be passionate about it.
Yes, to be able to walk it back and tone it down so that
Right.
you can have a conversation with somebody else. And
Yeah.
what was it? We were giving an example to that person last night about, well, you're here and they're there. And we were talking about Gary Johnson.
Yeah, it was that whole idea of it's the crawl, walk, run concept.
Right.
Again, but it's that whole idea of if you're, in point A and somebody else is in point Z, you can't just expect them to make that leap.
You can't just dump cold water on it.
Yeah, you have to walk them through it, and it's almost in a way that you probably got there as well. The problem is you're already there.
Yeah.
So it's like you expect everybody else to just be there already. So when it comes to pinging people's interests, it's really important to walk through it calmly, not sound like a nut. Because quite honestly, I want more rational preppers out there and not the crazy survivalists.
And, the funny thing is, most survivalists that I've ever met really are very rational,
Right.
with the exception of like one or two people.
Yeah, but the problem is those people are really vocal. So I want
Yeah.
more vocal, rational preppers. All of you out there, all of you are the rational preppers. You're listening to the show, so I'm making an assumption, but and we get your emails. So I mean, I
Yeah.
know that the good portion of you are what I'm going to call the rational preppers. Go out there and tell people what you think. I mean, it's okay. You're having a conversation with somebody you just met, who you already know you have a mutual interest with. So you've already got some kind of a tie, and it doesn't matter whether that mutual interest is permaculture, guitar, or Photoshop. It's okay. You've got a mutual interest. You've already gotten in. That's the proverbial foot in the door.
Mm-hmm. Moving on past that, a topic that maybe doesn't get brought up enough, or doesn't get brought up often, and I don't think gets brought up enough, is how do you pick the right network?
Yeah.
Because I mean, there are groups out there like the family groups, or what is it, the mutual assistance groups or whatever. And how do you, when you get into those, beyond just, well, these people give me a weird feeling, or well, these people's religious views don't jive with mine, or whatever it is, it's what are some key things that you can look for, and within the concept of like maybe even a decision tree.
Yeah.
Whether or not you like people. And I think we came up with some of them, and they're just basic questions that you should ask yourself about the people that you consider part of your survival network.
Right. And I like, you threw this one out, and I'm going to say it because I'm going to steal it from you. But I like this one. It's could I spend 30 days in a bunker with this person? And again, this isn't the survivalist speaking. This is purely from a, would I actually want to spend 30 days with this person? I mean, and I'm not telling you as your best friend or anything else, just in the same room or same house, same hotel even. I mean, you can expand it a little. But I mean, would you want to spend 30 days with that person? And there's a lot of questions you ask to get to that.
Yeah, and I think even if we were going to make it a little less comical, you hear it often as far as like the true test of a friendship or the true test of a relationship is, can you take a road trip together?
Exactly.
And that's exactly along the same lines. And I think that's really, when I was joking around the bunker, that's really what I was thinking of, but the bunker was a lot funnier than a road trip.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's just that idea of, do you want to actually spend time with this person? So this person's got a skill I could really utilize, but I can't stand them. Well, you know what? Go find somebody else. I mean,
yeah, there's more prepper fish in the sea.
Exactly.
Since we started it with the dating analogy, and I mean, there are definitely people that I've liked them as a person, but I've gotten in a car with them and gone across town and wanted to kill them.
Right.
And then there's other people like Jennifer, my girlfriend. She's great on road trips as long as you don't want her to drive. Because, man, you put her in a car and bam, she's out like light, which is great because then I can listen to whatever music I want to. I can do whatever I want. I can sit around and talk to myself. It doesn't really matter because she's asleep, Or you and I've gone on road trips together, and you and I've gone on road trips with another friend that actually did basically the same thing Jennifer did. He got in the back seat and immediately went to sleep.
Yeah, I wasn't even sure he was there.
Yeah, I think actually at one point we turned around and said, "Is Ken even still alive back there?"
Did we leave Ken at the gas station?
He would have never forgiven us.
No, he would not have. But so when you go to make that assumption of, could I be with this person for a period of time, you're going to ask yourself a series of questions. And it's like, how do I know if I'd actually want to spend a bunch of time with this person? Well, there's a whole bunch of things you can ask yourself. The first one being, how does this person deal with stress and anger? Like, you're in a stressful situation. What do you think? And, you can make assumptions. It's okay.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of have to. I mean, unless you have hard things to go off of. Like, an example would be, if you go out to dinner with this person, are they the kind of person that every time you go to dinner, every restaurant they go to, they send something back?
Right.
Doesn't matter what it is. They send something back or they cause some kind of scene. Somebody that is just, they're people that just make scenes just to make scenes, I think. Are they that person? Or are they the person that no matter if they ordered a well-done steak and a completely raw, still mooing steak comes out, are they like, oh, no big deal, and they just sit there and eat it, and they take it? Right. That's not a good trait necessarily.
Exactly.
Either.
The person you're looking for is almost the guy who can somehow, or the guy or gal who can get that steak, get it back to the kitchen, get it back to them done the way they want, and in the end, they are best friends with the entire restaurant.
Yeah, not the guy that makes a big scene or gal that makes a big scene, and you get the idea. But I think how people deal with anger and kind of watching for that. I mean, we know the people around our offices and our friends and in our personal social circles. At one point or another, we've had an opportunity to see people under even mild stress, and those are important things to look for. Do they flip out at the slightest thing, or how do they react? I think anger is such an important one.
Yeah, and you don't need that. The anger stress thing, because I think it's really closely related. You don't need that person who's going to, the minute a stressful thing happens, which is when you need all that prepping skills and your prepping network at its peak, you don't want that person running around that the sky is falling. That the Chicken Little is not the way to go.
Well, and I think there's another, even besides Chicken Little is a great one, 'cause we all know that person, but we also know with dogs, I know Jason and I were talking about this recently, that there are, within the dog world, there's what's called a fear biter, which is a dog that has a bad tendency of biting people, not really as a protection mechanism, but it's just he's afraid, and so instead of shrinking back like some dogs do, some dogs will become hyper aggressive.
Yep.
And there are lots of people out there in the world that do become hyper aggressive under stress and under the slightest thing.
Right. Well, there's also always that there's that third type too, which is the joke ends up being that you don't have to be faster than the bear. You just have to be faster than the other guy. You don't want your friend thinking that about you. Okay? I mean, if that's really the mentality they have going into every situation, and there really are people out there who think that at the end of the day, yeah, I've got friends, but you know what? I don't have to be faster than the bear. I just got to be faster than Aaron. and at the end of the day, I don't think that way. I know Aaron doesn't think that way. I think in terms of my 44 mag just has to be, hit the bear in the right place, preferably a soft spot. But point being,
Yeah.
It's all about judgment on a person's character.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of aspects to a person's character. Another question you asked earlier when we were talking about the show was, how does someone deal with disappointment? When things don't go the way they expect them to, or when they don't go the way they want them to, how does that person deal with it? Because if you're in a disaster situation of any kind...
That's a pretty large disappointment, I'm guessing.
That's a disappointment. But then even on top of that, things don't usually go the way you plan, right? The best prepper in the world has got to plan for the fact that all of their plans are not going to work out. I mean, at the end of the day, and when I say all, I don't mean all of your plans won't work out. I mean that 100% of the plan isn't going to work out. So what's going to happen is you'll get 98%, but 2% you're going to have to compensate for. Any good planner has contingencies, backups, all that kind of stuff. So you just have to keep that in mind and know that you can't be disappointed when plan A doesn't work out 100%. You want somebody you're working with to also feel that way, to also think in terms of how do I get to plan B, C, maybe even plan Z.
And people that, you don't want people that are going to freak out when the plans don't work. Because we all know that person that is the overkill type A personality, that if their plans don't work out well, they just flip out.
Or just shut down. I've seen that too.
that happens a lot too.
And then what happens is you have one more mouth to feed, one more person to care for, and you don't have help from that person. And that is no way to go through a disaster.
No. So I think, and that kind of lends itself to another topic that we were talking about before the show, which is avoiding people that are a drain. And that comes in a bunch of varieties. There was somebody that I was friends with a while back, and this was kind of a joke we made beforehand, and we were talking about, what was the term that Jason used the other night about it?
Oh, a spousal equivalent.
Spouse or spousal equivalent. And spouses will sometimes do, we were joking, sharing stories about spousal or spousal equivalent doing this. But there's always that person that's like, oh, well, I would do it for you. And you're sitting there thinking to yourself, maybe, but I would never ask you to do that in the first place. And those people are often drains. I knew there was somebody that, man, it's like every time the phone would ring, I would just cringe because it's like, oh my God, what stupid crisis are they having in their life? How much money do they need to borrow? Or, what just kind of poor, pitiful me.
Right. And it's never that person who stands up when you need help. So. No. We talk in terms of friendship as being this concept of, and this is going to sound horrible, and another friend of ours came up with it, but it's the bank account concept.
Yeah, we've used it a couple of times.
Yeah, we have brought it up before, but it's you can't just keep withdrawing. You have to make deposits too. If you write 10 checks and those 10 checks total $5,000, and you've only deposited 4, well, you've overdrafted. So it's that same idea with friendship. And I'm not saying that everything has to be an equal all the time thing. I would never recommend going through and keeping tabs on everything. That's a horrible way to go through life too.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you have to know that you can count on them when you need them as much as they count on you. And if everything they're doing is counting on you, and then the second you need something, that person's gone, well, that's not a valuable member of your network.
And even if they're not gone, there are... That is more common, but I have met people that they're happy to be there for you, but the problem is it's like, you just want to look at the person and go, you should see that there's a difference here, that I don't seem to have all these problems that you have constantly and all the time. And yeah, that's great that you'd be willing to do it for me, but the problem is I don't ever need that out of you.
Exactly.
And that's where it really comes in either direction, whether they're there for you or not. They're just a drain. And it's just like, I don't need this in my life. I have other things to do.
Yep.
And you're sucking up too much of my time and energy.
Right.
And I think at some point in our lives, we've all run into that person. But and there's other types of people that are drains. There's the resource drains, or people with dying hands.
Oh yeah.
I think I've also heard it called T-Rex hands recently, or We've all heard it a couple of
That's the
different
guy who
names.
always forgets his wallet.
Yeah, forgets his wallet or gets up to go to the bathroom as soon as the check comes, or it's there's a lot of little games that can move, but it's basically the person that never wants to put in their fair share or always tries to shirk their fair share in some way, shape, or form.
There's also those emotional drains. There are people, and Aaron alluded to it before. They always need something from you for emotional support, but at the same time, they're either not there, incapable of giving you that same support when you need it.
They also lack the maturity, I think.
Right.
A lot of those people that always find themselves in some kind of BS like that lack the maturity to be able to actually offer any reasonable help when you're having an issue.
Exactly. And then there's this is a horrible one, the time drain. These are people who always need you to do something for them that's going to require a significant amount of your time. And the second you need something, they're missing.
Oh, yeah.
They're all the same type of thing. It's just how they take your time. So, all the things we've talked about are drains on you.
They're all resource drains
Exactly.
of some kind.
Whether it's a direct financial drain, a time drain, or an emotional drain. If you are not getting something back out of that relationship, you need to just consider, is this too much for me to be able to handle?
Did the person eat all your trail mix?
Did the person eat all...
I'm kidding. You actually did not eat all my trail mix.
I left you trail mix.
And you put in a good one, which was trust your instincts. And we had a joke beforehand, before we started talking about the show, because there's a book that was... We've never done a review of it. Yeah, I'm going to go there. We've never done a review of it, but the book was good in concept, and I know a lot of people swear by it, but we actually really we left the book with a very strong opinion of it.
We liked the first half.
I wouldn't go so far as half. I would say we liked the first
chapter.
The Gift of Fear.
Yeah.
And that's not... The author himself is quite brilliant and has done some amazing things around that concept of trusting your intuition.
Right, and if you
instincts.
have the ability to just kind of strip out the conceptual piece and not listen to the story, then you'll be fine. But
I think the problem was we were listening to it like books on tape. We
felt offended.
Yeah.
I mean, and I don't think we should do a review of the book, or at least not right now, but go read it. Because actually, I do recommend the concepts.
It's a good...
But you'll understand, if you're a man, and some women even, will read the book, and at least the second half of the book will either offend you or I fear you. One or the other.
Yeah, that was kind of... It was very... There was a very heavy slant. Right. Gender slant.
Yes. Basically, if you're a man, you're evil and a rapist.
Well, yeah.
But I don't want to go too far into it because... it's just it's a sore spot.
But
the
point of it was trust your instincts.
Exactly. And I think the idea is, you get a bad vibe about somebody. You're in one of these classes together with them. You get this bad vibe. Well, you know what? Trust it. A first impression, it really can define a situation for you. And everyone out there. I'm gonna guess most of the audience is grown individuals. They've been through their teen years. They've probably been a little bit into it.
I'm going to venture to say we probably attract an adult crowd, not so
there
much.
You go.
Yeah,
that's a good way of putting it. So I mean, you've all had experiences with people. Okay, lots of them, social interactions. You can trust your instincts when it comes to those social interactions. Okay, it is very difficult to sometimes just say, you know what, I don't need to give this a second shot. But if your gut is really telling you, hey, this is not a person you want to deal with, just go with that. Usually the second shot and the third shot end up just being a waste of your time. There might be appropriate situations to do that, and I'm not telling you there aren't, but just go with your gut, trust it. And the other thing is, go with your close friends and family. They also have instincts and gut reactions to things. And sometimes, so this is where I'm going to a little bit divert. Sometimes we as people, not you guys, but I do it.
Human beings,
we tend to intentionally ignore our gut. And I mean, I've done it many times. I mean, we've done it with girlfriends, whatever. When friends and family are telling you, hey, why do you associate with that person? You should take a much deeper look at the relationship you have with that person.
Yeah, you really should. I'm actually watching someone's brother go through this right now, where he's dating a girl, and the girl is just rotten.
Yep.
I mean, there's just nothing, and I really don't like to say that about anybody, but there really is just nothing redeeming about this woman. And everyone around him is trying to explain to him, this girl, including his best friend, this girl is terrible, and he's not. And he's like, no, you just, what is it? Everybody always, it's this, oh, well, you just don't know him the way I do.
Right.
And it's like, no, BS.
Yeah.
Bullshit. I'm going to call bullshit. There's no way. No, you don't know something special about. I mean, the person is, you can know that the person, you can know them in a way I do, in the way that they have a sense of humor, that maybe they're shy about presenting to people they don't know. Like Jennifer, my girlfriend, is that way.
Yep.
Your wife, after it took her a long time, the two to kind of warm up to each other, and finally she's like, oh, I get it, Jen is actually really funny.
Yeah. When
you've said Jen's funny, I've never really gotten it, but one day Jen finally was
funny.
And it's a very quirky sense of humor, but she's hysterical once she warms up.
And like we said, a lot of the dating stuff is analogous to building a network. If you've got somebody
it's all
you're
the
bringing
same,
into
yeah.
your network, and your best friend's sitting there going, hey, I don't know, let's reconsider. And no, he's great. This guy's awesome. I met him a couple days ago. It's neat. He can contribute this, and this, and we're good. And your friend's going, no, this guy seems a little off.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not telling you to immediately throw this person away, but
at least have your guard about and be aware.
Don't put on blinders because you do have that. Going back to the mutual interests earlier, don't put on blinders because this person brings a mutual interest, one or brings a couple of nice things, if at the end they're really going to end up being that drain. But again, it goes back to trusting your instincts, trust the instincts of the people that you've already allowed in, the people that are close to you, and that's going to be how you build out this great prep network. And it doesn't just have to be a prep network. I mean, to be fair, we've talked a lot about the concept of chi, and we started the conversation off with how do you bring other people into the overall thing.
Survival chi, not Chinese chi.
Exactly, survival chi. But it's all about bringing people into it too. So these could be people that just expand. These are extra pieces to the puzzle. And good relationships expand upon what you are.
Oh, absolutely.
So if you can't find people that, I guarantee you, all of you guys out there can find people that add to your greatness. And, since you're listening to the show, you're all great.
And you're pretty.
Exactly. And, of course, I'm going to say this one. The best way to expand your social network is to go out, get yourself an In the Rabbit Hole t-shirt, put it on, and just go out. I mean, people will see that and immediately be drawn to you.
Absolutely, it is like a cosmic magnet, and people they will feel your survival chi.
It is. Now be careful.
Energy.
If there's two of you wearing an In the Rabbit Hole t-shirt,
oh, that's entirely too much. That's too much. That's too much good juice.
Oh, that's a lot of good juice. So try it. See what happens. I mean, we have done it, and we draw crowds. It's crazy. They're not even sure why they come in. They just want to. They want to join with us. And
it's my Guatemalan heat.
It is the Guatemalan heat.
Yeah.
But it's all about that In the Rabbit Hole t-shirt.
Yes. So moving on to more constructive topics. I think, and this is my personal opinion, I would, by and large, stay away from shared resources. I think. Yeah. I think if you've been friends with somebody for 10, 20 years and you really, really know this person, that's fine. When it comes to like shared compounds and shared pieces of land, that's where I kind of, there's too many things where opinions can vary too widely, even amongst very close friends about stuff. Like if you want to buy a big piece of land and then cut it down the middle and say, that's your half, this is my half. If you want to run around naked on yours, that's fine. But I'm going to wear flip-flops over here.
I'd like a privacy fence, please.
Yes, of course, of course, of course. But my point is, it's like you have to be very careful with that, because that can ruin networks and friendships very carefully. And I think we've talked about these ways of identifying people, but in part, you really don't know how people are going to react to a major disaster or something until it actually happens. So I think you don't want to, the old expression, don't put all your eggs in one basket. So don't have this, Rawlsian, mass group compound where you've got all of your stuff shared in one central location.
No, that's never a good way
I think
to do
that's
it.
just personally, I just see it as a recipe for disaster and disappointment.
I agree with you. I mean, we tend to have a similar view on that. But it's also that whole idea of this is about building a network, not about building necessarily the way you're going to repopulate the Earth.
No, I have totally different plans for that.
Exactly. That's a whole different discussion, and we probably won't do that on the podcast. But
I'm going to use chipmunks, evil chipmunks. I have no idea why that just popped into my head.
But at the end of the day, I mean, this is about building a network, and we talk about it a lot. Survival is not just when a disaster comes; it's day to day, and this network is just as important in accelerating your career. It's just as important when it comes to throwing a weekend barbecue and enjoying it. I mean, it's all of it's everything from the weekend barbecue to a disaster and all the things that could happen in between, including the stuff that happens regularly. Like we talked about, there's a disaster matrix. So within that matrix, a death in the family. Your network should be able to support you through that. And I don't necessarily mean financially, but that's where you need emotional support. You need people who are there for you. And you may know, this part of my network is not the part that I go to for that. That's this part of my network. And it's just about how you build that out, and it's a giant web, and it's something that I think more people should spend more time developing. And it is just like dating. Everyone in your network is a relationship. It may not be a relationship that's as intimate as dating. Probably isn't. There's very few that are like that. But at the end of the day, it is a relationship, and you have to treat it as such, and it requires care and feeding, and you have to nurture it. A lot of people believe, I can just go out and get this network out there and just somehow it just sits out there. Well, networks, sections of it die if you don't give it care and feeding.
It is just like a plant.
Yep.
You do. Yeah, it takes watering, care, feeding, love. You have to really spend time and energy on it. I mean, we've talked about that personally between us, that we've had friends that they'll just disappear.
Yep. Well, and even we've done that with parts of our network accidentally. It happens where
you become busy.
Life become busy, and you just become a little complacent sometimes. Yeah. I will tell you, the whole job search that I went through recently was a big wake-up call to my network, and I've been doing a lot of things lately to really accelerate the network, expand it, and keep it watered. That's an important. It takes time. It's actually something you need to plan for it. So when we say somebody is a time drain, the reason you can't deal with those time drains is because you've got a lot of people that you have to interact with.
Because you're social.
Because you're social, yeah. You've got to be.
Or you're in high demand.
Yeah, exactly. You're not a hermit.
Exactly.
Right? You're not living out in a rural area. You are an urban survivalist.
And with that, we wrap up episode 42. Thank you for joining us. If you like the podcast, make sure to leave us a review in iTunes. It helps others find us. And if you didn't, well, why not tell us about it using the contact form on the site? Seriously, the show's for you, the listener, and if you have something to say, we're listening. Be sure to connect with us through Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and the Urban Survival Forum through the links on the top right-hand side of the site at www.intherabbithole.com. Also, don't forget to sign up for the newsletter. By connecting with us, you'll receive updates about the site, notifications of new articles, and podcast episodes. That's right, we're not just a podcast. Every week, articles are posted to the site that cover all manner of topics relating to surviving in an urban environment, whether in good times or in extreme circumstances. Show notes are posted with each episode, where we invite you to comment on the show, interact with us, interact with each other, and let the world know what you're thinking. From the Lone Star State, till next time, stay safe and sound.